Every old apartment building has its quirks: a floorboard that always creaks, a pipe that rattles in the middle of the night, a draft you can never seem to locate. Most of us learn to live with these minor mysteries, dismissing them as just part of the charm or the curse of living in a place with a past. But what if one of those quirks wasn't just a quirk? What if it was a clue, a loose thread that, if pulled, could unravel a secret hidden within the very walls of your home? In March of 2021, a young woman in New York City felt a constant, unexplained cold draft in her bathroom. She decided to document her investigation on TikTok, thinking it would be a funny story to share with her friends. But what her camera revealed was not a simple crack in the wall. It was a dark, terrifying secret that turned her small apartment into the setting of a real-life horror movie, captivating millions of people around the world who watched, holding their breath as she ventured into the unknown. But before we start our story, smash that like button, make sure you're subscribed, and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any of our new, incredible stories. To understand how such a terrifying discovery could be possible, you must first understand the unique and complex world of New York City apartment buildings. The city is a living museum of architectural history, a vertical landscape of buildings stacked one on top of another, each with its own story. Many of the apartment buildings, especially in boroughs like Manhattan, were built in the great construction booms of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. These pre-war buildings were constructed in an era of different technologies, different social structures, and different ideas about living space. They were often built with features that are now obsolete: old dumbwaiter shafts for hoisting food between floors, forgotten servants' passages, and complex, often illogical layouts that were designed long before modern building codes. Over the course of a century, these buildings are not static. They are constantly being altered, renovated, and reconfigured. Walls are put up and walls are torn down. Apartments are combined, or larger apartments are subdivided into smaller, more profitable units. During these renovations, old features are often simply walled off and forgotten. An old service corridor becomes a void in the wall. A dumbwaiter shaft becomes a dark, vertical chasm sealed behind drywall. Sometimes entire rooms or sections of a building can be sealed off and abandoned, their existence erased from new floor plans, becoming architectural ghosts lingering just inches away from where people live, sleep, and eat every day. This creates a hidden, labyrinthine geography within the city's residential towers, a network of forgotten spaces and dead air waiting to be rediscovered. Add to this the intense and notoriously competitive New York City housing market, where every square foot is immensely valuable, and the idea of an entire apartment sitting empty and hidden becomes even more shocking and surreal. It was within one of these old, complex buildings that our story's protagonist, Samantha Hartzo, lived. In March of 2021, Samantha was living in a 3-bedroom duplex apartment on Roosevelt Island, a narrow strip of land in the East River between Manhattan and Queens. It was a nice apartment, but she and her roommates had always been bothered by a persistent, mysterious cold draft in the bathroom. No matter how high they turned up the heat, the bathroom was always freezing. She decided to finally solve the mystery. She began a systematic investigation, which she started filming for her friends on TikTok. First, she held her hand up to the window, no draft. She checked the air vent, no air was coming out. She waved a piece of tissue paper around the room, hoping its movement would reveal the source of the cold air. The paper was still until she moved it towards the bathroom door frame. It began to flutter. The draft was coming from the door. But that didn't make sense, as the air in the hallway outside was warm. Her investigation then led her to the area around the bathroom mirror, which was mounted on the wall just beside the door. As she got closer, she could feel the cold air intensify. It was pouring out from somewhere behind the mirror. This was strange, but she assumed there must be a poorly sealed hole in the wall behind it. She touched the mirror, perhaps to see how securely it was mounted, and that's when the story took its first terrifying turn. The mirror moved. It wasn't screwed into the wall, it was hanging, and it swung away from the wall with her touch. Her heart began to pound. In a video to her friends, her voice is a mixture of nervous, laughter, and genuine fear. She lifts the mirror completely off its hook, her hand shaking slightly, and what she reveals behind it is the stuff of nightmares. Behind the mirror, there was no wall. There was just a dark, gaping, rectangular hole, about 2 feet wide and 3 feet high. It was a black, empty void leading into a dark space within the building's walls. She shone her phone's flashlight into the hole, but the beam was swallowed by the darkness. She couldn't see the back of the cavity. A wave of theories flooded her mind. Was it a utility chase? Was it connected to another apartment? The uncertainty was deeply unsettling. She called her 2 roommates to come and see. Their reaction was a mixture of shock and horror. They all stood there, staring into the black hole that had been hiding behind their bathroom mirror the entire time they had lived there. Samantha's story, which she was posting in a series of short TikTok videos, began to attract attention. Her friends and followers were now completely invested in the mystery. What was on the other side of that hole? The consensus from her friends was clear: call the landlord, board it up, and do not, under any circumstances, go in there. But for Samantha, the curiosity was becoming unbearable. The mystery of what lay on the other side of that hole was too powerful to ignore. She felt like she was living in the opening scene of a horror movie, and she had to find out how the story ended. She made a decision that would turn her personal investigation into a global viral phenomenon. She decided she was going in. The final video in the first stage of her discovery is a masterclass in building suspense. It shows Samantha preparing for her expedition into the unknown. The sense of dread is palpable, but so is her brave, almost reckless determination. She talks to her friends on FaceTime who are nervously watching and pleading with her to be careful. She prepares her gear. She puts on a face mask, not for the pandemic, but for the dust and whatever else might be in the air on the other side. She straps a flashlight to her forehead with a hair tie. She grabs the only thing she can think of, a hammer, which she holds tightly in her hand. Looking at her own camera, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and adrenaline, she says, "My landlord's getting a really fun phone call tomorrow." She takes one last deep breath, says a nervous "wish me luck," and begins her journey, climbing feet first through the dark, mysterious hole in her bathroom wall, disappearing into the secret world that was waiting on the other side. As Samantha Hartsoe's friends watched in horror on their phone screens, her legs disappeared into the dark void behind the bathroom mirror. For a few tense moments, all they could hear was her muffled voice and the sound of her moving through the tight space. Then, her headlamp's beam illuminated her new surroundings. She had successfully made it to the other side. She found herself in a small, dark, and incredibly creepy in-between space. It was an unfinished, gloomy cavity, cold and silent, with exposed pipes and electrical wires running along the walls. It was clear that this was some kind of utility chase or a structural void left between apartments during construction. But as she stood up and panned her light around, she saw another opening a few feet away, and through that opening, she could see a sliver of light. It was another room, a different apartment. Her heart pounding, she cautiously moved toward the second opening. She peered through. She was looking into what appeared to be a completely empty apartment. There was no furniture, no sign of life. It seemed to be under construction, with unfinished floors and bare walls. The air was still and freezing cold. She took a deep breath, gripped her hammer tighter, and stepped through the second opening, officially entering the secret apartment. The first thing she noticed was the scale of the place. This wasn't just a single hidden room. This was an entire, massive apartment. As she explored further, she realized it was a full 2-story duplex, and it was all completely empty and eerily silent. It felt like a ghost apartment, a forgotten world existing parallel to her own. As she documented her exploration, panning her phone's camera around the desolate space, the true, terrifying nature of the discovery began to reveal itself. In the middle of what would be the living room, she found several large, black trash bags filled with unknown contents. Her mind immediately raced with grim possibilities. Why were there bags of trash in a supposedly vacant apartment? Further in, she found other signs that someone had been there, and recently. There was an uninstalled toilet sitting bizarrely in the middle of a room, still in its plastic wrapping but disconnected from any plumbing. In another corner, she found a small, empty shoebox. Sitting on a dusty floor was a single, half-empty bottle of water. This small, mundane object was perhaps the most terrifying find of all. The trash bags could have been old construction debris. The toilet could have been left by workers. But the water bottle was a clear sign of recent human presence. Someone had been in this cold, dark, hidden apartment. Someone had been sitting in the dark, drinking this water. But where were they now? Had she just entered the secret hideout of a squatter or someone hiding from the law? Was she truly alone in this apartment? Every dark corner and every shadow suddenly seemed more menacing. The silence was no longer empty. It was heavy with a sense of unseen presence. She continued her exploration, moving with a mixture of journalistic curiosity and raw fear. She documented everything: the unfinished staircase, the empty bedrooms, the dust-covered floors. The entire apartment felt like a crime scene, a place abandoned in a hurry. The biggest shock came when she found the apartment's front door. She cautiously approached it, half expecting it to be locked or barricaded. She turned the knob. To her astonishment, it was unlocked. All this time, she had risked climbing through a dark, narrow hole in her wall to access a secret space that she could have simply walked into from the main hallway of her building. This realization brought a moment of dark, ironic humor to her terrifying ordeal. She made sure to lock the front door from the inside, giving herself a small but much-needed sense of security. After completing a full tour of the cold, silent apartment, she knew she had to get back. The adrenaline was wearing off, and the full weight of the situation was beginning to sink in. She made her way back through the creepy, dark space, climbed back through the hole in her wall, and finally stepped out of the mirror and back into the warmth and light of her own bathroom. She was shaky, but safe. Her friends on FaceTime let out a collective sigh of relief. The expedition was over. She immediately called her building's management to report the unbelievable discovery. The official explanation she received was, in some ways, as strange as the discovery itself. The building's management confirmed that it was a vacant apartment that was in the very early stages of a renovation. Construction had been halted, and for reasons they couldn't explain, the unit had been left unsecured, and the hole behind her mirror had never been sealed. While the explanation was not paranormal, the reality was deeply unsettling. The knowledge that a complete, abandoned apartment was directly connected to hers, accessible through a simple, hidden opening, and that unknown people may have been using it, was a terrifying security nightmare. When Samantha posted the full 4-part story to her TikTok account, the reaction was something she could have never anticipated. It went massively viral. Millions of people watched her terrifying journey, completely captivated by the real-life horror story. Her videos were viewed over 20 million times, and her story was picked up by major news outlets all over the world. She was interviewed by NBC, New York, the BBC, and even appeared on the Ellen DeGeneres show. She became an internet celebrity overnight, known globally as the NYC apartment woman. People were obsessed with the story because it tapped into a universal fear. The idea that our homes, our private sanctuaries, might not be as safe and secure as we believe. It was a modern folktale about the secrets that can lie hidden just inches from where we sleep. The story of Samantha Hartzo's discovery is a quintessentially 21st century phenomenon. It's a mystery that was investigated, documented, and shared entirely through a smartphone. It reminds us that in old, complex cities like New York, there are still forgotten spaces and hidden worlds, architectural ghosts lingering just behind the walls of our modern lives. Samantha's bravery and curiosity allowed millions of people to vicariously step through the looking glass with her, to explore a secret world, and to confront the unsettling possibility that we may not always know what or who is on the other side of the wall. Her landlord did indeed get a very fun phone call the next day. And for the rest of us, it was a gripping, terrifying reminder to maybe check just how securely our own bathroom mirrors are attached to the wall. Thank you so much for watching. If you were captivated by this modern-day mystery, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you'd never miss our next amazing story.